Welcome to the second episode of Miss Retros. Today we are going to be discussing Little White Lie. Little White Lie was a web series first created in the summer of 2007 after Eric Gale, Nick Lang, Matt Lang, possibly, and Chris Allen won a contest and won quite a bit of money to create a series. It was published to YouTube from between the 6th and the 8th of July 2009. It took a few days to upload them all. Talking about the competition, there is an article up from the Michigan Daily, which I will try to link below, and it is about them, and it includes a photo, including a blonde-haired Eric. They ask Eric, Nick, and Matt in it, but it's mainly about Eric. Okay, so it was written and created by Eric Gale, Nick Lang, Matt Lang, and Chris Allen. It was directed by Eric Gale, but also the first and second assistant directors were Nick Lang and Brian Holden. It was filmed by Matt Lang and Forrest Cassie. I hope that name's right. Music production and mixing was Mark Skodeski. It was edited by Eric Gale, Nick Lang, Matt Lang, and Brian Holden. The music was by Darren Criss and Grant Anderson. So, let's discuss the plot and general notes. So, the basic plot is that Sammy and Duda Reese steal Kevin Bushwald's music while he is in a coma. So, I think the general premise is pretty good. The only really note, I don't really have many notes about the plot, really. There was a plot twist in the end of the third episode 3, part 3, where they lose the competition, and but they still get the deal, which I thought was a bit predictable, but it was still good. I mean, it's hard not to be predictable these days. If they'd won, that'd be even more predictable. Thanks to Tanya, we didn't. Okay, so there's also a cliffhanger at the very end, where Kevin, Nick's character, he wakes up from his coma. So it's a bit of a cliffhanger waiting for season 2, but it has been confirmed that season 2 is not going to be a thing. But I would again try and find a link because Eric Gale posted the synopsis for Act 2 online. I think it's on Tumblr. So I'll try and find that. It might not be available though. So the audio wasn't great. Eric Gale's come out. Eric Gale made a video a while ago, by the way, talking about Little White Lie, which is how I know a lot of stuff. He said that all the audio was dubbed really because there wasn't good quality for the camera, from the camera audio. But that it doesn't really work because they didn't really know what they were doing. The setting's pretty good. I think they might have filmed on a college campus, possibly a high school campus, probably college. It's pretty believable. It works. There is a plot point which Starkins actually put in the comments. I need to try and remember which episode it is. There's an episode later on where Tanya is trying to find Kevin's website at the same time that Sammy and Duda are trying to find Kevin's website. And they're trying to take it down. But Tanya just keeps trying less and less numbers and numbers and numbers. It's 4 combinations, it's 4 numbers, and it's like so many combinations. Just trying them all, And in the comments, Stark has just put, please pretend this is how the internet works. He may have made that comment, but I'm still gonna comment on that. Also, I have 2 other bits that I really have on here. Kevin's guitar that they show sometimes, it has the logo. It has the bars and then the music notes falling off. I don't know anything about music. Apologies if that's not the correct terminology. And then at one point, I believe it's either it's in the first episode. It's in episode 1, part 2. There's meditators at the house. They're like meditating, thinking about Kevin. Um, and it's quite obvious they used some family members for that because there are 3 people credited with the last name Lang and one last name called Gale. There's more people, but there's just some examples. Okay, let's get into characters. So the main character is probably Sammy Reese. She's played by Elona Finlay. She's quite unlikable, and kind of a bad person. I think they meant to make her a bad person, but I don't think they meant to make her that unlikable. I think you meant to understand what she's doing. Duda Reese, played by Chris Allen. He is the opposite of Sammy. He has consciousness. His consciousness. He's conscious. He's he's a conscience. Conscience. That was it. He's a conscience. Um, he's quite kind, likable, but he's a bit of a pushover, and he lets Sammy dictate what he does. Zach is played by Brian Holden. He's relatable and funny, but he's not in very much. Okay. The bands that are in it, I will discuss a bit later because they're not big characters, most of them. They only appear a few times. There's a lot of ensemble in this show, like a lot of extras and a lot of characters that don't have names. I think some of the hot girls have names, but I honestly don't know who's who. Okay. Speaking of hot girls, Tanya Fremont is the leader of the Hot Girls. Tanya Fremont on Hot Girls. She's played by Lauren Lopez. Tanya is the villain of the story. She's unlikable, but she's also sometimes relatable. I think she makes an offensive joke. I don't know whether to label it transphobic or not, but she tells everyone that Sammy is going to transition, which is quite offensive. They all like really support her or anything. I wouldn't say their reaction is transphobic, which is why I've got it under Tanya instead of the general plots. But apart from that and the end and the revelations, she is more likable than Sammy because she still helps. She helps Kevin. And there's a lot that happens to her in a certain part. Oh, I've just realized I didn't put what episodes the songs were in. I think it's episode 7. Yeah, it's episode 7. A lot of bad things happen to her. And like she's a bad person, but does she really deserve everything that happens? That's the question. There's a lot of bad things happen to her. But it was after the joke, so like karma. Okay, Toby Phillips is played by Darren Criss. He is kind, but he's a bit of a jerk to Tanya, especially in episode 7, above other ones. But yeah. Okay. Jim. Jim is played by Jim Povela, as always. Jim is a loner, but he's iconic, and he does a poetry bit at the Battle of the Bands. It's episode 3. It might be part 1 or maybe part 2. I'm not quite sure which, but it's one of those parts. I have a feeling it's part 2 that only has one song in it, so it makes sense to be part 1, part 2. I think. Anyway, then we have Kevin Bushwald, played by Nick Lang. He's in a coma for all but like 2 episodes. He falls into a coma at the end of episode 1, part 1, and then he wakes up in like the last scene of the entire thing. So he's barely in it, but we get his personality through his videos, through his songs, and through his general development from what we hear from other people. So what we can tell, he's fairly relatable. The songs that he writes, that then Sammy and Duda steal, the demos that he sings aren't Nick Lang singing, the Darren Criss singing. And they're trying to hide. But I think personally it's obvious, but that's just me. And then the only really other character I'd say it's particularly important is Nigel Waters, played by Malcolm Tulip. He's okay. He's funny sometimes, but he's not a big character. He doesn't have he has a bit of personality, but I wouldn't say enough to like you love him or hate him. He's kind of meh. Sorry. Okay, songs I guess. Okay. I will say right now I forgot to put which episodes these are all from, so I'm gonna try my best. So the first song that we hear is Don't Play With My Heartstrings, the don't in brackets. Which is basically the whole point is to show that Sammy and Duda aren't very good at writing their own songs. The song's performed by Elona Finlay and Chris Allen, and I think it's quite effective to show that they're not very good at writing songs, considering it's just the same song, the same. It the lyrics are literally comprised of "Don't play with my heartstrings." Yeah, don't play a riff. Play with my heartstrings. Wait, no. Play with my heartstrings. Play a riff. Don't play with my heartstrings. No, don't play a riff. That's pretty much it. Oh, and they have baby in sometimes. Yeah, that's the first intro we have to them. Then in comes the theme song. It's called Caught in a Lie, and it's very good. It's sung by Michelle. I apologize if I pronounced this wrong. Michelle Camoyle. I think that's how you say it. It might be wrong. I'm sorry. Camuel. It's spelled like Samuel, but with a CH. I assume Camuel. Camuel, maybe. I still think we're still in episode 1 here. Episode 1's part 1 still. I'd say it's a masterpiece. I love this song way too much. It's sung by Darren. It's our first introduction to Darren, his character. I love this song so much. This is my favorite song from the White Lie. There are quite a few though. Okay. It's Over Now, the original, to the demo. It's sung by Darren, as I said. This is from episode 1, part 2. I don't much to say about it because, we're going to come back to it in a minute. But yeah, it's pretty good. Okay. Now, since the first episode's over, I'm going to note there's background music sung by Chuck Chris in pretty much every episode. Unfortunately, Chuck Chris died in February of last year, which is a shame. So rest in peace, Chuck. I just wanted to mention that quickly because it is in every episode, pretty much. Okay. I don't think there's any songs in episode 2 because episode 2 is mainly them trying out the song. I think I need to check what episode 2 is about, to be honest. They've stolen the music. I think they're going over it, listening to some demos, and just preparing for Battle of the Bands. Okay, episode 3 is where Battle of the Bands starts. There's 3 parts. I'm not sure which parts go where and or which order the songs are in. So I'm just going to go in a random order. Okay, Fancy Machine, I'm sorry, is performed by the band Hunky Tonk. No, not Hunky Tonk, Hunk Tonk, I think. Hunk Tonk? I think it's Hunk Tonk. Hunk Tonk. In Hunk Tonk, there are the actors because they don't have character names. Aaron C. Berger, Liam White, you may know him as the camera guy, and also he has a phone call. And Mitch Voss. Then there is Hold 'Em Tight by Love Grenade. In Love Grenade, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce every single one of these names. Tony, it looks like Pizanecki. That's what looks like how it's pronounced. Oh, I'm so sorry about this one. Ma Hurexine. I do not know how to pronounce things. I apologize so much for this. Trevor Smith and Mark Swiderski. So that's in Love Grenade. Okay, then we've got You Left Me by the Ex-Boyfriends. This song's like a minute long, but it's only like 10 seconds in the show. I was listening to the back to Look Where That Ends, the background noise while I was writing these notes. Okay. And in the Ex-Boyfriends, there's Danny Murray, Kyle, I think that says Colton, but that might just be me not knowing how to spell. And Spencer, I think this is Palmoid. I think. I apologize. Okay, now Boy Toy, probably the most famous from Little White Lie. So it's performed by Tanya Freeman and the Hot Girls. So Lauren is the lead for this song. Meredith also provides backing vocals, Meredith Stepien. Rita Corey and Jamie, I think that says Becaris? I think Becaris, something like that, I'm sorry. Are on the, not drums, because Meredith's on the drums, bass guitar, and probably keyboard, I think, are the other ones in the band. And then guitar is Darren Criss, and he has a really good guitar solo in this, which is not in the it's not in the official recording, but it is in the tour, like in Space Tour and Apocalypse Tour. You can have the guitar solo. Okay. I've written down this time, so I have to turn back. Okay. So last three is It's Over Now. I put It's Over Now increase, but it's just It's Over Now. Was Elona Finlay, of course. I put ER for some reason. Like that's not her last name. Elona Finlay and Chris Allen again. Performed pretty well. Later episodes, they are also joined by Darren Criss, Lauren Lopez, and Jim Povolo, singing in the background. Because they joined the band later on. Sammy was written and sung by Darren Criss. This was later turned into Harry, so quite a few people know it, even if you haven't seen Little White Lie. I quite like this song. And then the final one I have is the song Dude as a Spy. If you go in the comments of this part, it's episode 7. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to say. Sammy is episode 6. All the other ones episode 3. Dude as a Spy is episode 7. And if you go in the comments for that, they're all about either singing the lyrics of Dude as a Spy or comparing it to Spies Are Forever. Those are all the comments in there. That's sung by Brian Holden with, I think there might be some backing vocals in this song by Michelle Chamul again. Is it Camille? What did I say earlier? Camille. I said Camille. It's iconic. Yeah, so that's all the notes that I have. So let's go on to the next portion. Okay, hello. Today we have an interview with Elona Finlay. Hello.
Hi.
Okay. First question. How did you get involved with Little White Lie?
Oh, good question. So I had a friend who had actually gone to, I believe it was high school with Nick and Matt Lang and Eric Congill. And when they were looking for somebody to play the role of Sammy, this friend thought, just reading the description, that it was kind of a perfect role for me. And so he reached out to me. I'm actually Canadian, so I don't live in the US, and it was an American show. So I had to drive across the border. I drove about 5 hours to get to where they were filming and auditioning in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I auditioned and yeah, I got the role.
Would you ever be involved with another Star Kid production if they asked you? I know you're in a very Potter senior year.
Yeah, I think I'd love to. I do love theater and I love performing. My primary function, though, and my favorite piece of performing is I'm a dancer, and there's not a lot of really big dance roles in Star Kids shows for the most part. So I would say that's where my strength lies, and that's that's kind of my wheelhouse. I would love to do another one, but I also know logistically, because I live in Canada, it makes things a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I am not talented enough to keep up with those people. They are amazing. So
Yeah, they're great. Do you keep in touch with anyone from Little White Lie?
yeah. I mean, I keep in touch with people from Starkid in general. It's a very welcoming family to be a part of. So absolutely, yeah, still chat with lots of people.
If you had, no, what advice would you give your past self?
Ooh. So I made the mistake of reading the YouTube comments. You
Yeah,
should never do that, especially when you're playing somebody like Sammy, who's not an overly wonderful person.
no,
And
no.
when I was younger, I had just been in quite a bad car accident right before we filmed the show. It was about a year and a half before we filmed the show. And so I had really bad scarring on my face, and a lot
Yeah,
of the comments were quite rude about my appearance. And
yeah,
I read it, and it really, really hurt, because I was quite young and really cared what people thought. So I guess ultimately what I'm saying is, don't read the comments, and also don't care what people say about you. If you love doing something, just do it anyway.
yeah. It's pretty solid advice. If you had to play another character from the show, who would you play?
Oh gosh. I loved Meredith's character. She was just so fun. I loved working with her in those scenes, and she was always just such the comedic relief. And I feel like there's always like a little bit of like an unspoken bond between the two characters. But yeah, I would say probably Meredith, if
Yeah, she
not
seemed.
Tanya. But there's no way anyone's ever replacing Lauren Lopez.
Oh no, not at all. Yeah, Meredith seemed a bit like a mean girl, but also a bit of a nice side.
Yeah, heart of gold.
Agreed. What was your first impression of Eric, Nick, Chris, and Matt?
Oh my gosh. So I went into the audition. I didn't know anybody, and I was terrified, just because, I was quite young and didn't know anybody. I was in a different country and no idea what to expect. They were wonderful. They're exactly who you expect them to be. They're just very outgoing and welcoming and silly. And I remember the audition day very, very well. I met Chris, I met Lauren. Lauren, of course, showed up with cookies to give to everybody, which is very, very Tanya in the end, because she had like kind of like little welcome cookies. But yeah, I just remember them being really, really open and wonderful and lovely. And they just made it such a fun audition process. And I don't know if you've ever auditioned for shows, but it's a very scary thing to do. So it was one of the best audition experiences I've ever had.
Yeah. All right. What was your favorite song in the show?
Dude is a Spy.
It's gotta be. It's so
That's such a
iconic.
good one. It came out of nowhere. Like all the other songs were kind of written, and my friend who got me connected had written a couple of the songs that you hear in the background, and Chuck Chris wrote a couple of the songs in there. But Dude is a Spy just kind of came out of nowhere and was just so funny that
Yeah. I was
yeah.
looking at the comments for that video, and it was all about Dude as a Spy.
Oh, the best. Yeah. Well, and Chris did such a good job like filming those scenes. It was just so silly and so funny.
What is your favorite part or episode?
Battle of the Bands. That was so much fun. I have never felt so cool. I don't think I'll ever feel that cool again. I can't play guitar. I had to fake it. So Darren had to kind of like teach me to move my hand in a way that made it look like I was playing. The funny part is I got blisters on my fingers from fake guitar playing, which I find very, very funny. But it was just such a great time. It was one of those days where everybody was all together for the shooting. So it's one of the few times where everybody was actually there, and it was very, very long days, but they were so much fun. And yeah, I felt like a rock star.
The fact that it's three parts probably helped with that.
Yeah, for sure.
I know they were talking about doing a season 2 a while ago, which they never said they would. But would you have come back if they did?
Yes, definitely. We had a lot of like unresolved pieces about the characters that never got discussed, and there were some things that they left out because we thought maybe there would be a second season. And yes, I feel like Sammy needed some redeeming qualities, and we need to find out what happens to Kevin, what happens when he wakes up. But I also do like that there's kind of that you make it up yourself idea, that you can kind of just
Yeah.
let your imagination run wild and figure out what happened.
Yeah, I think it was 9 years ago, Eric put out a post in Tumblr about the synopsis.
Yeah, I remember reading that and be like, oh yeah, there were some silly conversations we had about what we could do with it, but Yeah, obviously it never happened.
So before full transparency, before I came here, I watched the Eric video, and he mentioned that you were staying with them. So what was it
Yeah.
like staying with them?
So I not recently, but a couple years ago, found out that the apartment that they put me in while we were filming was actually Jeff Blim's apartment.
No way.
Which, yeah, really, really funny. And then I also remember when I watched a Harry Potter musical being like, because one of the decorations that was in the apartment was the invisibility cloak that they used in that show. So there's so many little Easter eggs that now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, there were so many connections. And yeah, it was so much fun being with all of them, and they're wonderful people. So it was a really good experience. And yeah, when we were filming some of the scenes, like the party scene and any scenes that were at like Sammy and Duder's house, that was at the Lang's house, and we were all living together. And yeah, it was a little chaotic, but it was a lot of fun. I really love Matt and Nick's parents are lovely people. And Sammy's room was their older siblings' room. So yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. And I feel like you get to know people really well when you see their roots and see where they come
Yeah.
from.
I just want one final question, which is,
Yeah.
well, that last one was meant to be the final one, but
Okay.
in the second part of the first episode, we see all the meditators, and I was looking at the comments. Were they the people's family?
Oh
I saw
gosh, I
quite a
can't
few.
remember.
I just think I saw quite a few Langs in there.
Yeah, there was yeah, because it was summertime when we were filming this, and it was on a college campus for the most part. We had to pull a lot of just random people to show up into things. So there are a lot of people who just show up who are people's siblings, parents, whoever.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's a lot of connections there. I think someone's aunt was in it, and yeah, there's professors from the University of Michigan as well. Just a lot of random connections and random people that were a part of it, because nobody was around at the time to help us film.
yeah. All right, that is all I've got written down for today. Thank you so much for
Amazing.
taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you. This was great.
All right, see you next episode for Me, My Dick.